moving towards, this is going to be the same set of questions. They're in your agenda, and I'll have them at the end. Where is function? There it is. Okay. This committee, and a lot of you, when we discussed this stuff earlier, said, look, how do we really do this well? How do we think about being a model? And so one of the things we're doing is collecting a portfolio of models from you, from other communities, and by the end of these 3 months, when we're ready to start diving into options, analysis, that kind of stuff, I'll put together a portfolio so we can start comparing and contrasting. But I'm going to talk about 5 models in 5 minutes first. All of these have links on the Gallatin River Task Force project website, so you can go find out more about these. But first, okay, the first one I want to talk to you about is Telluride, and I heavily lean towards things that were either ecologically at least somewhat similar to us, or towns and communities that were kind of like us. So Telluride, this is called the valley floor, what you're looking at, and they have preserved 572 acres outside of the town of Telluride city limits. It's a town. Unlike Big Sky, it is incorporated. But what they tried was eminent domain outside the city limits. So it went to the Supreme Court of Colorado. This was in 2001. Took a while to work through the courts. Supreme Court affirmed it, at which point the legislature took action and said, you know what, we're going to make an exception. We don't think you can do this through eminent domain. So Plan A did not work. Plan B is they went into mediation, worked out a plan that they could buy, essentially, the land you see in the bottom, for $50 million plus whatever interest it took till they could raise it. They formed the Telluride Valley Floor Preservation Society. It's a nonprofit. It took them 3 years to raise the $50 million plus interest. The city bought it, or actually the Conservancy did at that point. Bought it, the city did put a conservation easement on it, and they had their 9th annual Valley Floor Festival this summer. So it has turned from an incredibly controversial thing. It was controversial because of how they were doing it. There was worries that this would block affordable housing, which was one of the plans for this area. I think this will all sound familiar to us. But I think what's interesting is over time, they started with historic open space as their main things. But if you look over time how it's evolved, ecology has become a much more important part of this, and they're doing a lot of stream restoration at this point. Second up,
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Quick question is, do you know, usually you can only use eminent domain, a local government can, if there's a compelling public interest. Was Telluride getting its water supply from this area? Or?
As far as I can tell, no. They used historic trust, preserved it as one of the most endangered spaces, in America in 2001, and it looks like, I haven't read the whole court case, but it looks like the argument was it was contiguous to the town, and the town system would work without it, but I don't think it's its water supply. There are wetlands, and they did use that as part of the argument. Sorry, Scott, I don't know exactly, but it had a lot of...
I just asked because I know Steve is really interested in using that strategy here.
I'm on board, Scott.
I just wanted to use the court precedent.
Right.
Drag me into it.
So I think one of the interesting things about that is they were trying very out-of-the-box stuff and hit a lot of resistance and had to really start over and think about it again. And at this point, it seems to be working for the community. Santa Fe Watershed Investment Fund. I thought about talking about this next month, but basically what these are, and there are others, both internationally and looking at in the U.S., is Santa Fe water users fund ecological services, basically this upper watershed you can see here, through a small portion of their water rates. Basically what happened is after the Cerro Grande fire in 2000, which, if you know the Los Alamos area, which is quite close, devastated their water supply, which is a surface water supply just like Santa Fe and not like Big Skies. But the sediment, the runoff, was incredible. It cost millions and millions of dollars to fix that system. But what they did is they started with, kind of traditional force thinning, sort of get the fuels out kind of thing, because this is an area that hasn't been burned regularly, and it's an area that, as a natural system, does burn regularly. So what they did is they did a bunch of studies, looked at how controlled burning might work, and realized they could save a whole lot of money, plus increase the sort of upstream habitat and protect their water supply for far cheaper than it was going to cost if they had a catastrophic fire. Did a lot of marketing and focus group work before they implemented this, went to a vote, and started in 2013. I bring this up because of the last bullet. I talked to the Nature Conservancy, and they are at the very beginning of their research. Nature Conservancy was one of the partners here, but they're thinking about instituting some kind of water fund for the 9 watersheds of the Upper Missouri. Very early in thinking about it. But this is a possibility. It's a really interesting way of getting downstream users to pay for some of those upstream ecological values, and could be adapted. Third one is bail. This is, we've talked about TMDL, we've talked about some of the streams with water quality impairments in the Big Sky area. In 2011, Gore Creek, which is a fishery kind of akin to what we're looking at here, was put on the impaired waters list. Since that time, they've completed a water improvement plan. They went through strategic planning. It looks a lot like what maybe we're envisioning for a stewardship plan. And in March of this year, the town of Vail appropriated $2 million, and it is all non-point source. It's stormwater, it's drainage, it's loss of riparian vegetation. And they are committed to up to $9 million, it looks like at this point, but they said they wanted to try things, see what works, start getting a feel for how much it might cost. One of the really interesting things about this, when you start reading what they did, is they're very concerned about the fisheries resource, the economic impacts, but also the sense of what the town is. This is not what Vail should be. Even if our stream looks okay, it's not acceptable that we have one that isn't fully functioning. Interesting approach. Bozeman, I think, do you all know where the Story Mill site? Does anybody not know where the Story Mill site is? Okay, so this is in process, and I know several people in this room could talk a lot more about this one than I can. And I wish I had a pointer, the East Gallatin, which is a river with water quality impairments, is that sort of light blue line that goes through. There's been wetland restoration, stream restoration as of this spring, and when this park will open is a moving target, I think, 2017, 2018. But this is a great example of trying to reduce sediment and nutrients while at the same time gaining community open space and recreation benefits. And then last but not least, these are sculptures. This is in Nevada on the eastern Sierras, and they've done this in the Truckee and Carson rivers. This is, believe it or not, for those of you who are familiar with it, this is a Willow Planning. What they did is it's a combination of art plus nature. They used hundreds of volunteers to weave willow sculptures which provide erosion control while they're growing, and they grow. This was done in 2014, and it's also used as a way to engage the community and keep seeing and interacting with ecological change. Take-homes, just really quickly, is none of these projects that I looked at really seemed to work with getting the partners on board unless they had ecology plus something else. And a lot of times, the something else was the initial driver. And then tools and approaches is, there's a bunch of them. People use rules and regulations, education, BMPs, site-specific projects, economic analysis, you name it, it's been used. And there's a lot of models and examples for what you might think about here. And the other thing is, all of them took time, and several of them took more than one chance to work on them. So that's those, and then I want to turn to you guys. So, whoops, I just did the wrong thing, didn't I? Okay, so, sorry guys. All right, so the discussion, look at this. All right, see, I can't drive these either. Ron, we need you to drive in the future. All right, so now we're gonna move to our discussion questions, and as I said, these are gonna be the same for each of our meetings, these 3 meetings. The first one is, we talked a lot about at our first meeting about sort of a model community. But I'd like to hear from you, kind of thinking about what you've heard, a little bit about models, your own knowledge. If we strive to be a model community for ecological health of our river systems, what elements does this need to include? You know, what would this look like if we were really successful at this?
Scientific baseline,
Okay,
understanding what we're optimally supposed to be and where are we now. That contrast should be helping us understand what type of restoration work is inherent. It's going to be a necessity.
okay. So scientific baselines of the reference conditions, correct? You're talking about,
Correct. Where should our streams, waterways, local watershed be like? What should it be like scientifically in terms of
Okay.
being healthy and intact, resilient?
all right.
Sustainability.
What does that mean?
Yours is a component of sustainability. I think.
Okay, what else would you include, Steve, since it sounds like it's big?
Well, I mean, sustainability is a very, very broad thing. It contains a lot of components, and it just, for me, it says that if you're heading towards the cliff, if you don't realize it, you might go over it. And the object is for this community to continue to exist with the environmental attributes that it has without degradation.
Okay,
I mean, I don't know if that means anything. It means something to me.
And we can't do that without the baseline, is what you're saying.
Correct,
We don't
yeah,
have
you
a
gotta,
spot
you
to start.
you really need to know where you're at, but sustainability, I think, is, you have to remain pretty conservative in that you don't want to exceed the capacity of the environment that you're in. I mean, sustainability for Gallatin County is much different than for Big Sky. You have a finite amount of ingredients to produce this.
all right.
Yeah, the
so-
carrying capacity is limited.
Okay, I'm trying to capture this
Yeah, I don't
right.
know, it's, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that.
No, this is very
It's a huge term that I think everybody has different definitions of it, and I just look at that 30% build out. Can you sustain everything that you want to at 60%, 70%, 80%? You know, you have to examine each step of the way to make sure that you're not bursting out of the sides.
I would say resource conservation would be a big one.
Okay, and anything in particular within resource conservation you want to highlight?
Water.
Having it, or quality of it, or?
Using it wisely.
Okay. Okay, use wisely.
Karen,
Yeah,
I would add community awareness. I mean, I think that everyone, that there's a general understanding of why this is important.
community awareness. And when you talk community, are you talking immediately in the Big Sky area? Are you talking in our larger zone of influence? Are you talking everyone?
Well, I think you have to start within the Big Sky
Okay.
area and the people that are here, that are the members of the community. And yeah, ultimately, if it was even larger, but
Okay.
let's start in here.
Okay.
Identifying our values here, the Big Sky.
Yeah.
Values.
The phrase I like is defining the desired condition. So you've got what I was referring to, scientific baseline, and sometimes that's not always agreed upon, but as long as people agree on a desired condition that can be worked towards.
Mm-hmm. So, to work towards, right.
If you're not there. I mean, some communities are closer than others.
Okay,
One that's
great.
relative to Mike's, and that's the river comes first. So obviously, we all have economic interests that we care about in Big Sky, but rather than pursue those first and let the river pay the price, you actually recognize that the river is the goose laying its
Okay.
golden eggs, and you're gonna accommodate the river first.
Okay.
So I think that's a really good point, Scott. And I think you look at Santa Fe, and you look at Telluride, and you look at Vail, and maybe the Story Mill, and they're all reactive plans. So for this community to be a model and to change the paradigm, it's how do we anticipate based on those values? What are the values that we set to hold, and then make a plan to ensure that they are maintained?
Okay, so being somehow proactive in an anticipatory way. Okay, and then I'm going to get Pat, but first Pat, because my handwriting is really disintegrating. Let me get it. Okay, we're going to put this here, and then Pat, models continue. Yes, what's another?
I think historical perspective is really important, because before there was a Big Sky, this area was, or as Big Sky was first starting, it was a liquidated logging resource or timber resource. And if we accept current condition or some future condition that we want, we have to look back and see what was the potential, what were the wetlands that were lost, and what was the water quality that maybe was lost and now has been regained to some extent. So we really need that historical perspective.
All right, so sort of a long look, then, is that right? Okay. All
I
right.
think a piggyback on that one would be your regulatory framework. No one's brought it up, but one of the glories, or in my mind, one of the good things about Federal Clean Water Act is that it sets a benchmark for us. What was the condition of waterways here in 1974? That should be a salient question, because that helps inform your scientific baseline, your reference condition, as well as the legal stipulations that come with land use patterns today, tomorrow, and for the future.
Great. Yes, Susan.
Yeah, can you define when the river comes first, what river you're talking about and how far does that go? Because what I'm looking at is the resort community model is that at some point there will be a 4-lane divided highway going from where the workers live to the resort. Mm-hmm. And that impacts the entire canyon. And anytime I talk to anybody about this, they say there's no room for a 4-lane divided highway down the canyon, because you're bringing in workers, looking at all this stuff about housing crisis, bringing them in from West Yellowstone, and certainly there's tremendous traffic from the Gallatin Valley South. So that could impact, if you have to do that because of the numbers of people, that has enormous impacts on the entire river, and all of the stuff you want to preserve is now for grabs.
Okay, so defining that
take
river.
a look at, what river you want to protect.
So Susan, what river? Well, that brings up actually another question that's come up.
It's not just the West Fork.
So West Fork, Gallatin, Madison, do you guys include all of those when we're thinking about it? I see some nods, so.
When I said it, I meant the main stem Gallatin, because the Gallatin is a product of its tributaries.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you meant Gallatin, but we have to think about, there was Steve, you're back there, you had something you wanted to add.
This is kind of just a question, but I think the proximity of the highway and the confined space along the Gallatin leads to all kinds of sedimentation problems, landslide problems, chlorine treatment of the highways problems. Doesn't MDT have to be part of this too? If we're going to maintain the water quality and that, I mean, the slopes are severe in many places along that road, leading right down into the water.
Right.
And
So
that's scenic and also recreational, impairments. And also, remember how much static there was about extending the power line down to Big Sky. If you grow a lot, you're going to need a bigger power line.
okay. So what I'm hearing, we're going to come back to all this. What we're doing is sort of getting this on the table. Once we get through all of our information, we'll sort of start thinking about what's the top, prioritizing, thinking through it. I'm hearing quite a bit here about sort of what we're calling our zone of influence. Is that something we want to keep thinking about? I see sort of, yes. Hang on a second, Susan. Does anybody think we don't need to consider the zone of influence at this point? Okay. Susan, you, oh, Mike.
Well,
Sorry, I think it was Mike and then you. And then I'll get back to you, Susan.
Well, I just had one other comment, not really about the zone of influence, but on some of this other stuff, like our scientific baseline and the sustainability. You know, today we've been talking a lot about water quality. What we don't want to forget is water quantity. You know, we could do a whole bunch of work to this watershed, and due to you know, climate change and increased groundwater pumping, all of a sudden we're out of water in the stream. So I think it's important we think about water quantity also, and I don't know if we've ever figured out, you know, some kind of minimum flow that we want to have as a goal in these streams, but probably worth it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and if we could, since our next one's water supply, I'm glad we got it noted here, because clearly fish don't function without water, among other things. I hope we come back to this next time too. Scott, you had something?
So regarding the zone of influence, we kind of had this arbitrary rectangle that we're focused on, but that doesn't follow watershed boundaries. I would like to have our model recognize that there should be multiple winners and not be a zero-sum game. So what we do here in creating our model should benefit not just the various interests in our area of influence, but downstream as well, including City of Bozeman, ventures in the Gallatin Valley. We should be pursuing a model that recognizes multiple winners and as few losers as possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when we think about it, when we get into evaluation, you can hear how some of this is starting to look a little like criteria. We'll think about how do we do that. Susan, did you have something brief?
Yeah, the key thing here is you have to look at how massive the impacts of a doubling or a doubling and a half of the population up here is likely to be, because like I'm telling you, the housing and the transportation and these kind of issues which are now becoming recognized in Big Sky as something to deal with, those are water issues too. And the impacts of just not having your workforce living in Big Sky. And if you do, then how much of this capacity are you willing to devote to workforce housing? And if not, the county is going to be picking it up, because Bozeman isn't picking up affordable housing either. So this all dumps on the county, and essentially the kind of development on well and septic on top of a highly porous aquifer from Belgrade to Gateway is what the norm is going to be.
Okay, so thinking about those interactions, and you know, one of the things I really like about what all of you are doing is you're alluding to our next two talks as well, which is great. If I could, I'd like to turn to our second question there. And again, I'm going to send out a link after this meeting. And if you think of more things or feel like you didn't have a chance to express it, let's get those out, because we're going to use all this and come back to it. This is not a one-time thing. Sierra?
I just have a question with all of the model portions. Where's the balance of the economy too?
Okay. Yep. And that came up in the last meeting too.
Because we talk about what the rivers bring, but also what's the numbers that Big Sky is bringing to the state of Montana? And where's the balance of that too?
Okay, great. So keeping that in mind. Okay, that's really helpful. Okay, next, if Kevin, are you?
It ties to your second question there, but you know, the comment about the river comes first. I think the economy is 100% tied to that river. And when you look at, and this is piggybacking on what Sierra is saying, when you hear the numbers that anglers alone are $40 to $50 million dollars a year, everybody who buys real estate in Big Sky wants to see a beautiful river that's ecologically healthy. So really showing the true economic impact of the river and the tributaries on this area, I think, is a big thing to address.
So thinking about all those components. Thank you, that's helpful. And Kevin, since you started to, can you finish tying it to our second one, which is what are the most important things to address in this area?
Well, I was saying the economics of an ecologically healthy river system.
Okay.
So that would be part of the conversation when we're
Yeah.
going through the process is it matters
It matters
this
to
much
Big
economically
Sky
to have a healthy
economically to
river.
have a healthy river.
Okay,
So Scott and I were talking earlier about, a lot of these economic valuations are about, you have X number of fishermen, they put this much, they spend this much per trip, and that's one way to do it. The other thing that is much more complex, but goes in, is housing prices. What's the benefit to housing prices and the value of the land based on those amenities? I bet there would
Workers
be
that
people.
build those houses.
I bet there would be MSU researchers. It's very complicated economic stuff, but I'm sure there's
so yeah,
university.
that multiplier effect,
Sure.
the direct and the indirect.
There's a multiplier effect, but there's also the aesthetics. Like economists can say, well, would it be worth $10 a year
Yes,
to
the
you,
willingness to
$100
pay.
a year to you, or $1,000 a year to you, as a Big Sky resident, to know that the river is ecologically healthy and beautiful?
Okay,
And if
so
there
the
was value
economics
there,
of
there's
that too.
researchers that do that.
Okay, yes.
Headwaters economics.
And these are things that are not unique to Big Sky, because certainly everybody in the Gallatin Valley has these feelings about how the canyon should look, and, whatever they choose to take out of the canyon in terms of what their interests are. I have neighbors who, every fall, they went to see the fall colors, whether it was a paved road or not, and so there's these kinds of things that are, it's not just Big Sky.
Okay, keeping that bigger matrix that it's in mind. Guy?
Doing specific answer to your specific question,
Yes.
given what we heard, what the most important things to address. I think the most important thing to address is where are we in relation to our reference condition? The reference condition being something that, again, provides that ecologically healthy system. We need to understand where we're supposed to be, where we are, and then do, as they say in the HR world, SWOT analysis, your challenges, your opportunities, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats. Where are we getting problems? Where are we having successes? And identify paths forward based upon that SWOT analysis.
Okay, great. Becky, you had something back there.
I want to pick up on where Kevin was leaving off a little bit on the economic value of the river, and try and tie a connection to, and I'll use a term that I heard earlier, I like the term, the tipping point. And is there a tipping point where too much development is going to all of a sudden turn us away from what, the water quality may be great, but you're living in the middle of a concrete forest isn't going to work. And so more of a cumulative effect, a bigger picture look. And I think, try and just get right to it. I mean, what's the biggest threat to our river? More and more people would be my guess. Too many people impacting the river. All the cumulative impacts of all the people are going to ultimately be what I think degrade the river.
Okay.
I don't think we're all worried about mining anymore or that kind of stuff so much. But if you look at that, where's the tipping point? Where's the point where too much of a good thing is going to ruin it?
Okay, and when you say ruin it, you mean not just the ecology, but the sense of the place, all those other values?
Not just your technical number of the water, but the whole picture, the scenic. You may drive through a little patch of beautiful river, but if you come up here and it's just a concrete jungle up here, what's it worth?
It can ruin the economics too.
Hang on, I think Jesse's been trying to get in for a while now. Could you, yeah.
I was just going to add to that I think we need to look at the ecosystem sort of as a whole in that process and taking into account wildlife and open space and the effects that loss of that habitat might have on quality of life and economics in Big Sky too. And that would get pretty complex, but that's the dream.
Okay, on econ and quality of life. So sort of tying those things together, sort of the human dimensions as well as the natural ones, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just ride on the coattails of what Jesse just said, because basically is what I wanted to say too, in terms of, keeping in mind the wetlands piece and knowing that we have a whole system in place and that that river depends on the whole system to be a healthy river. So I'm a land-focused person, so I tend to focus on what's happening on the land that contributes to healthy rivers as well. And it's been touched on quite a bit in different ways throughout the room, but just keeping in, think about what's the most important thing we can address. It's addressing the system, the entire system.
So that system piece, several of you brought up.
Land and water.
Brad?
I think my comment would tie together with that, and what guys was knowing your reference state. We also need to have, the most important thing for me is have a reference state that is informed by possibility for future state. Rolling in things like climate change, invasive species, all the people that are here. We might have a reference state that we can never achieve because the ball has rolled down the path so far.
Okay, so you mentioned specifically climate change, growth. Is there anything? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last one.
I don't know what the heck else that said. Probably weeds.
Maybe habitat loss.
Can I just question, given where fisheries biologists are, can I just look at basics now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so thinking about that. All right, any final, again, I'll give you this, it's more, Susan. You had something there? No. Okay, if it's all right, again, we're just starting this discussion. We're going to revisit these questions 2 more times in our next one, but I do want to see pretty specifically if there's other things you need to know about ecological health of the river system. Are there gaps, stuff that you've got questions about, think some information we need? I need to know those because we need to try to get that for this group. So what else do we need to know?
Sounds like we need to work on getting our wetlands on that.
Okay. Wetlands map. Yeah, and it's interesting because the Gallatin Valley is well mapped, but not here. Okay, what else? What else do we need to know?
I'd like to have a presentation from somebody from maybe the WGM group that did one of the recent build-out reports and do a 10-minute summary on what is the status of build-out in relation to what are the near-term necessities with wastewater management. I mean, we already know what the build-out is.
Those are coming, I can promise that
Okay,
one.
great. Can't wait.
Okay. Stay tuned for November for wastewater. All right. Other things that you need to know. I'd like to specifically focus on ecological health if we can, just because I know we're going to hit supply and wastewater. Yep, Scott.
I was going to say critical wildlife habitats. So, for instance, where's the Bighorn Winter Range along the Gallatin River? Mm-hmm. Where do grizzly bears congregate? Within our project area. Mm-hmm. Any specific data, including migration corridors, would be really beneficial.
Okay. All right. Yep. So Kristen is saying the riparian areas aren't necessarily so well mapped. Okay, Brad.
Because I also wear a forester hat on occasion, I would like to know the condition of the soil surrounding upland forest.
Mm-hmm. Surrounding upland. Do you want condition changes? I know you've talked quite a bit about vegetative changes over time.
Yeah, and the wildfire risk.
Okay.
To piggyback on Kristen's concept of we need to map the rest of the wetlands or get an accurate big picture, I think we still need an accurate big picture on the hydrology of the valley itself from main stem all the way up. We heard today a report on, where we're gaining and losing in terms of nutrient transfers between the golf course and one golf course and the river. I think it'd be incredibly helpful to understand hydrologically where are we gaining, where are we losing, where do we have vectors for different types of pollutants. Understanding where we have those areas will inform prioritization of where we need to do restoration, conservation, etc.
Okay, well, I know we're going to get a good start on that. Mike, you want to say anything directly to this immediately, but I know we'll catch you next
we
time.
have, so at the Bureau of Mines and Geology, we have some data on that already, and a lot of what the study that the the GWIP program is just wrapped up in the area, and they'll be actually making a computer model this winter. Is going to be addressing a lot of that in a really detailed way.
The connectivities?
Yeah.
On a sub-watershed by sub-watershed?
Well, and specifically in the meadow area mostly.
Okay.
Especially in the Middle Fork stretch through the golf course. That's kind of the focal point of the computer model.
Let me ask you guys a question, because you brought it up in a bunch of different ways. Do we need to know what we know? This is some specific things that I think Mike will be able to share with us, where the process is and what's known right now. But I'm starting to wonder, this is a gap. We may not know all the aquifer stuff we ever need to do. Do we need to start systematically identifying where gaps are in our knowledge, that we just don't have anything? Is that something we need, or do you feel pretty comfortable as a group that we can get most of it? I'm asking because I don't know. So what do you guys think? Is that at least something to look at?
It couldn't hurt to organize it.
Yeah. Okay. Gaps. All right. Anything else, especially on ecological health? And I'm so glad you're doing our work for us, because we want to make sure all three of these meetings tie together, so this is good. And you got something?
And I would add, I was thinking about wildlife habitat and the forest condition, just species of concern.
Okay.
That must be, I mean, that's a pretty easy piece to pick up, but something we should sort of be paying attention to.
Okay, so paying attention, not just the fish, but the wildlife.
And plants.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just said, so throwing it all in there together.
Okay. All right, Scott?
Karen, one thing I'd love to put on the website is this, I stole this from Chris and I was going to bring it to her, and then I was going to give Jesse a copy too. It's a new paper by Rick Hauer and Clinton Malfeld and others at the University of Montana about the importance of gravel bed rivers as the most important wildlife habitats in the West. And it's really groundbreaking information. It's about a 13-page paper that was in Science Advances, which is a scientific journal. And I'll send you the link to it.
Perfect.
But it's really eye-opening, and it's very relevant to this effort.
Okay, great. I'm glad you brought it up. I'll follow up with you, but I'm also going to do that plea again. Look, you guys have a lot of expertise. If you have resources that you think are really on point for this group to know about, give them to me, and we'll get them up. Anything else on this that's coming to mind? And again, I'll give you another shot at it as you think about it. Anything else that we absolutely need to know that we don't? Okay, seeing that and that we're hot and it's 3:45, I'm going to move on then. Thank you for this. This is great. And again, I hope we got a warm up. Really pleased to see how you're tying into our future meetings. We're going to ask these questions again. So this is kind of what we're looking at. And then we're going to take all of these and help use them to start our analysis in January. But first, I do have public comment. I had a few brief moments. If there's anyone from the public who would like to comment, or can. But well, let's hit folks that are not sort of the designated stakeholders, but really are community and public stakeholders. Do you have any comments or thoughts you wanted to share with this group right now?
I will just say I love what I'm seeing here, and thank you very much.
Okay, great, and thank you for coming. You know, this is time out of your day, and appreciate it. Any other thoughts or comments? This is an open process. I'll get you Ann. Ann's got a comment no matter what. This is an open process, so I do hope if you came today and this is your first one, first of all, you'll come again, but that you'll keep interacting with us. And our website, Ron, I'm going to mess this up, but I need to advertise this.
Escape.
Okay, and then, do you have it on Chrome here? Yep. Okay. This is, we're starting to populate it. But we have resources we'll have when the meetings are posted, and this is going to keep growing. Ron has recorded this, so we're going to clip out the presentations that were done today so you can watch them if you need to see more or share with friends. But we hope you'll use this as a resource. Everybody, stakeholder, public, interested community, will use this as a resource. We're getting there, and it's going to have a ton of information. That I'd like to hear from Ann. had a comment. See, I hold you.
No, it was just a shameless plug that for those of you that are working on drought or interested in drought in the area, next week DNRC, we're hosting a public drought forum with the Lieutenant Governor, who's chair of the Governor's Drought and Water Supply Advisory Committee in Bozeman, next Thursday, 11 to 12:30 at the public library. If anybody would like to come, we're going to be updating our state drought plan, so it's an opportunity to just sort of come and share your ideas with that.
Okay, and that's the library. I'll get that stuff from you, and we will send out to the group.
Yeah, it was just, I don't think that we're expecting a whole ton of people, but it's, if anybody wants to come and give us some input on what we're doing with drought planning at the state, that'd be great.
And as you know, drought variability is really important, so hopefully we'll hear more about this in September as well, so at our meeting. With that, I'd like to close, and my question for the day, we're going to start back with Ron, but is just real briefly kind of what you've heard, what you've thought about. How do you feel about moving forward with thinking more about the health of our rivers? Ron?
First of all, I'd like to thank the panelists for coming down. It's apparent we've got a lot of experts and knowledge about a lot of different subjects. This is kind of a high altitude look at the watershed, and as we go forward, we're going to kind of bring that down to more of a on the ground look at what's going on here in Big Sky with development, our operation for water and wastewater. So I'm looking forward to the next few meetings, more information coming out, answering more of your questions. I think this website will be a great tool for folks as we build this over time.
Great, thank you. Go ahead. Anne?
I think it's going well. I love having a room full of people and good discussions about thinking about the ecological health of the system.
Okay,
So looking forward to it.
Matt?
I feel good about it. I think the breadth of knowledge and expertise and obvious passion is impressive and encouraging.
Okay. Brian? Brian?
You're looking forward to. No, he's passed.
Life is good. I'm amazed everybody came up this morning.
Okay. All right, Brad, any thoughts on kind of what you heard about this group going forward from here?
No, a great group of people. I'm really pleased to be able to work with a bunch of faces that I don't normally get to work with. So.
And then our public answer too. You can go ahead. Any thoughts? This is kind of your first try at it.
No, I'm happy to be here and learn more about, I love living in Big Sky, and I think we all want what's best.
Okay. And
I think within light of what's going on in the river in Montana right now with our neighbors to the east, this is really important. Being in the fishing world, it's definitely a concern to that industry. And I think it's also very interesting. I think hopefully one thing we can get out of this is looking at where we're going with build out. We've had just recently a lot of information come out about what the build out of Big Sky could be. And then when you look at a number of a possible 16,000 people living in Big Sky down the road, that if you take the high road graph that you presented earlier, I think if we can get our arms around where Big Sky is really going to be in 20 years, and if we can get ahead of that, I think this is extremely important.
okay, great. Thank you.
Nathan just said it all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. It's very impressed with very informative, and looking forward to the next meeting.
Great. Tori?
I just speak to the process. I started with my doubts, but every moment that these meetings have been going on, I'm more and more encouraged that it's, hasn't degenerated to bickering and I know we're not into the thick of it yet, but I just want to put in the plug that right now I think it's going really well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Darcy?
I think this is going really well too, and I feel like I'll just kind of go big picture and way down the road here, but I feel like this process and the outcomes that will come from this will be one of the examples that others in different areas of the United States will probably look at and learn from.
I hope that's right. I mean, my sense of Big Sky is we're all from somewhere else and we're all here because this is a special place. But what's being done to keep this place special as it grows and who's in charge? So it's very encouraging to see stuff like this happen.
Great. I'm sorry, Ethan.
No, I'm really pleased with this group. I'm impressed by the number of people in this room, but also by the diversity and the backgrounds of the people in this room. Everything from local government to just interested community members and scientists and people interested in the development and economics and everything in between. So I think that, this is probably the best opportunity this area has to have a comprehensive plan. So it's going really well.
Okay.
I would say just as someone new to come to this entire world and even the state, just being able to learn from many different perspectives on the levels that are involved in these issues. Wonderful experience so far.
Great, thanks, Emma.
I agree with what Ethan said. Basically covers it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's great challenges ahead. And I think there's this group and the community have their work cut out for them. But failure is not an option. So, if you fail, you just ruin everything. So. Anyway, so.
And we'll look forward to more of the health department perspective.
Oh, man.
You know what? You guys said it last time, but I appreciate the candor, and I hope that continues. Sierra.
In layman's terms, I guess now I kind of am curious to know where are we at and where do we need to be. And I hope that the end result, not really knowing what the end result would be, stepping into this is whatever rate of growth there is, there's proactive steps of this needs to happen before we get here. This needs to happen before we get here. So that there's concrete things for the community to actually do.
Great.
I wanted to thank all the stakeholders for participating. This is an amazing group, and this is the first one of these meetings I've been to, and I got to say I'm pretty excited, optimistic. Makes me feel great to live in Big Sky and think that maybe we can solve our issues on our own and figure it all out. I have great faith in this group, so thanks.
Okay. Bill?
Yeah, it's just great to see all the diverse interests here work towards a common solution from the bottom up to the top down. I think sustainability, the most sustainable solutions are when everybody's together.
Okay, from the bottom up. Okay, great. Peter?
I'm really appreciating the depth of inquiry we have here. A lot of great information presented, and then different viewpoints and experiences are really kind of honing in a lot of questions, looking at things from different angles. So I kind of like all the feedback, the presentations, and the questions that are raised by that information. So appreciative of that.
Great, thank you.
I did comment earlier, but I am wondering where the teeth come into all of this. I do appreciate everything everyone's been saying, but after you start with your data, and because really you're talking development versus what this group comes out with. So I guess I just kind of want to toss that question out.
Yeah. All right, great.
And likewise, just as a member of the community, we moved here and we've loved this area for so long because of its beauty. So I'm trying to figure out and inform myself and figure out how I can help keep that.
Okay. Great. Great. Guy?
Cautiously optimistic.
Still, huh?
Except for weapons laws.
All right. Steve?
I sense real progress, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate the panel and all that was presented, and from the county commission side, it's a lot of good information that I'm kind of soaking in on, and I particularly like Guy's questions. He has good questions. That confusing.
We're going to go work on our bikes after this.
Yeah, we're going to do it.
Well, we do have the social hours. Yeah. Bob?
So my comment would be specifically to Ecological. And the thing that I didn't hear today was, as Steve kind of alluded to, there's no impending cliff. Nobody said, this is the red flag that we've got a stake in the ground and we've got to react to immediately. The group has stated it, that we're all looking forward to a collective solution. And that was not what I expected to hear today. I thought there was going to be some panel member or some part of the public that said, well, this is screwed and we're doomed. So thank you for that, and I look forward to, as the optimism part of us says, a solution coming out of the end of this.
Okay, great, thank you.
I like the simple point that Packy made, that it's going to be people that are going to create the biggest impact on Big Sky. And as we look at our max build out and the 16,000 number and all of that, I don't think that we should overshadow the effort that it's going to take and that impact to get to that point, specifically with the construction efforts. And those potential impacts are frightening. It's hard for me to get a visual on that, a handle on that, what that is going to look like. But I sat in candy for 2 hours this morning.
Thought about it
because of that,
yeah.
right? And it's imperative that we don't let that slip off the radar in this whole scheme. How we manage that specifically.
Okay, great, thank you. Carrie.
Mostly, I really appreciate the collaborative, proactive effort. I think that's wonderful. Working in government, the reactionary, as mentioned, is always tough. So, thank you.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Carrie was saying, I guess I'm just extremely optimistic about the opportunities for Big Sky, and I know a lot of people in this room have worked in this arena. A lot of communities blew it on their rivers when they were founded, and they buried them under their streets, and they turned their backs to them. And listening to the panel, you know, the community hasn't done that yet, and we have the opportunity to showcase the river and enhance it. So I'm optimistic. I'm thankful for everybody coming up here today. I'm looking forward to a beer.
Okay, great. Wendy.
I just, sitting here thinking about it, it's just the, whether there's a conflict or a hard regulatory thing to be solved or something like that, I think there's a lot to be learned from just sharing ideas, information, research, that having that common ground, I think, feels really valuable. And so it's fairly interesting to be part of that.
Great, thank you. Mike?
Oh yeah, I think it was a really thorough discussion today, extremely thorough, great presentations, guys, thanks, and great questions too. I think that's maybe most important, that nothing's, everybody's comfortable asking anything, and nothing's off the table, and I think it's working.
Great, thank you. Scott?
I'm excited about the creative energy in this room, and based on experiences in other cities where they doubled their population but actually reduced their overall water use, I don't think Big Sky has to quadruple in population while also quadrupling water use and quadrupling wastewater discharge. So that's where I'm looking forward to harnessing this creative energy in the room, is how can we grow and maintain the values that we really care about.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Jim,
thank you.
I'm encouraged by the big picture that I think I heard today, not only about how Big Sky is affected in the immediate sense, but what happens downriver all the way to Belgrade and Manhattan and Three Forks, but also from where I come, which is on the other side. And these are questions that we've actually asked along the way with perspective to Madison River also. So I'm encouraged by this big picture thing.
Yep, and Jim.
Big Sky affects a lot.
Okay, and keep us honest on the Madison side. That's what we're hoping you do. Susan?
I am hopeful for the process, in that I think we have the right people in the room to figure out how to balance all of these things, the economic, the ecological, the scenic aesthetic or whatever, and how all that works. And I'm hopeful that what we come out of with this for Big Sky can then go down to the entire Gallatin watershed, because how we choose to distribute the water among all of the uses, and gradual urban or agricultural water, some into urban water, and how we make those changes, and if we can do that in a flexible, graduated way, then it'll come out that it will remain the last best place, not only for Big Sky, but for everything that we like about being here. If we don't make that happen, we're not the last best place anymore. We're
Okay.
like everybody else.
So we can keep us the last best place. Thank you. Steph, you got anything?
My head hurts.
Your fingers hurt.
Steph has been taking extensive notes. Jeff.
But no, thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, I say thank you to everyone for coming as well, and thanks for all the panelists for putting together such great presentations, a couple of which had really short notice. So.
Yes, thank you. Eric?
I think, honestly, with the collaborative approach we got going, 20 years from now, we'll everyone in the room, everyone who participates will have the opportunity to look back and say, I was part of that. So I guess that's where I feel we're headed.
Okay, great. Joe?
I was one of those on short notice, but I was thrilled to be here. I mean, I'm happy to come back anytime. Anytime I look at fish data for a couple days, usually I look at super fun chemistry. Give me a couple days looking at fish, and I'm a happy guy.
Great. Jessie, I think I missed you.
I would say I'm encouraged by the big picture look, like Jim said, that we're not just looking at water anymore. We can't pull the rivers and the streams out of the rest of what's going on in Big Sky. So all of those other issues will at least be addressed and looked at during this process too, which I think is really valuable.
Great. And I'm going to have Kristen say the last word, but I really want to thank you for coming, for contributing, for the... Oh, Pat, I missed you, sorry.
I don't really have much to add. Anyway, I think...
Feels left out.
Yeah. It's just going to be redundant to everything everybody else said, but this is an extremely complex issue, from water to landscape to development, economy, and no complex issue gets solved through rancor. And that seems to be the knee-jerk way, is to gird your loins and fight the fight. And if we do it in the courts, nobody wins. Getting together and starting from this standpoint where everyone here has said in one way or another that they care about the health of this river and they care about the health of the community. I didn't hear anybody say, I only care about my stuff. And so I think from that standpoint, I'm very optimistic, and I think everybody, we've established a firm foundation that we all have common interests that probably exceed our individual needs and interests.
Great. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. I want to have Kristen have the last word.
I'm really encouraged and thankful for all the passion and interest to make this process successful. I'm really optimistic just because we have people from such diverse interests that I really want to see this work and see the best things happen. So I also want to mention too that I'm very thankful for you, Karen and Joe. You guys have done such an awesome job guiding this process. I don't know what we would have done without you. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a treat to be here. It really is.